Even though Netta still belittled her with nicknames like old woman or childy, Charmian's confidence in herself continued to grow. In the spring of 1900, she was 28 years old and working for E. Mickle and Company, one of the largest shipping firms in San Francisco. She even had a personal assistant reporting to her. She was engaged to Will Minstrel, but was not sure he was worth leaving her career over. Married women weren't allowed to keep jobs as stenographers at E. Mickle and Company, no matter how good they were at their jobs. One day, as she returned from a long day at work, she encountered a young man leaving Netta's house. He was dressed in bicycle trousers, a woolen shirt, and bicycle shoes. His name was Jack London, and he was then 24 years old. Charmian had overheard Netta and Roscoe discussing his Yukon stories, which had been appearing in the Overland since January 1899, but she had not yet read any of them. She went inside and said mockingly to Netta, "So that's your wonderful Jack London?" Netta chuckled and told her that his genius was so great, she soon wouldn't even notice his clothes. A few days later, Charmian exchanged her noon hours with her assistant so she could join her aunt and Jack for lunch at Young's restaurant on Market Street, near the Ferry Building in San Francisco. After the luncheon, London was to be photographed in Klondike gear borrowed from the museum in the Ferry Building to illustrate the article that Netta was writing about him for the Overland Monthly. According to Charmian's recollection of the day, she walked into the bustling cafe and saw her aunt seated with a rough but handsome young man. She was immediately struck by Jack's wide-set gray-blue eyes and his full-lipped mouth. When she walked over to the table, Jack awkwardly stood up and stuck out his hand to shake hers. When she took his hand, she was surprised by his forceful handshake. They sat down, and her aunt introduced her and bragged about her star role at the shipping firm. Jack was filled with curiosity and seemed to hang on every word the two women spoke. He asked her about the origin of her name and what it meant. She explained that her mother was a poet and had chosen it because in ancient Greek it means, "what comes from joy." With the mention of literature, Jack asked if she had ever read Rudyard Kipling, especially the short story, The Brushwood Boy. Charmian answered that yes, of course, she adored Kipling. When Jack asked what she was reading, Charmian told him Hardy's Tess of the D'Urbervilles. At her answer, Jack nearly jumped out of his chair, telling her he'd been trying to get his hand on that book for weeks, but couldn't because the library would not carry banned books. When Charmian offered to lend him the book, he was thrilled. Netta asked Charmian if she would review The Son of the Wolf, Houghton Mifflin's forthcoming collection of Jack's Overland Monthly stories. When Charmian cautiously agreed, Jack offered to have the early proof sheet sent to her. "It's a go, Miss Kittredge. I'll hold you to that." At the end of the luncheon, Jack asked when he could see Charmian again, so they could talk books and he could borrow Tess of the D'Urbervilles. Netta intervened to suggest that Jack accompany Herman Jim Whittaker when he came by to be interviewed for his perspective on Jack. Jack agreed to come to their home in Berkeley before Charmian left the two of them to their photo shoot and headed back up to her office. During the first visit to the house on Parker Street, when Charmian invited Jack into her decorated rooms, she was struck by how immediately he responded to them. Unlike her Aunt Netta, Jack seemed to understand her need to surround herself with beauty. I had a feeling that he was brightly aware of the feminine individuality of the room, and he showed interest in my various girlish activities, whether in music or drawing, writing, even dancing. Jack walked around her den picking up objects and asking questions. He particularly noted her statue of the Venus de Milo and her bookcase overflowing with books. Charmian recalled. His glowing eyes ranged rapidly over the volumes, and he seemed in a fine fervor, murmuring titles and authors or touching the backs with his small hands. Soon we were talking very fast, discussing works we had both read. Tess of the D'Urbervilles had not come his way. This I lent him, together with Maurice Hewlett's The Forest Lovers and Flood Tide by Sally P. McLean Green.